everybody, and welcome to another board game discussion video. Today's video is actually sort of another continuation of what ended up becoming a mini-series that I did a few months ago, where I talked about friendly local game stores, and I talked about the people that you sort of don't really want to play games with, things that are like annoying when you're playing with other people, all this kind of stuff. And then I also talked about gaming with non-gamers in a few other little videos. And I was very much inspired by a comment on one of my recent videos by 26Snoopy82, and the comment in part said that they want to have me discuss board game nights, and I was like, that's a really good point. I've talked about a lot of aspects of a game night, but I have not said anything about what it means to run and have a game night, and whether you're hosting or going to one or anything along those lines. So what I wanted to do today is talk about what I consider to be two major types of game nights, which are where you have it in a public place where everybody goes and meets up somewhere, like a friendly local game store, for example, and the other one being where it's in somebody's house and everybody comes to that person's house and it's just like a big sort of house party where you just play a bunch of games. So I wanted to talk about the two of those and just do sort of advantages and disadvantages and what I personally have seen work in terms of what you can do to prepare and how you can get people excited and interested and all of that kind of stuff. So I hope that you enjoy it. We're going to get started with gaming at like a friendly local game store or some other public place of some sort. When it comes to gaming in a public location, you have a lot of things to really seriously consider. And what I'm going to do with these two sections is I'm essentially going to go over four major points. And I'm going to go over very briefly pros and cons for doing these things in a public location, and then pros and cons of the same aspects in like a private home or whatever it happens to be. So the four major things are, first and foremost, location. Second thing is food, because I love food and food makes a difference when it comes to board gaming. Well, food and drink, technically. Third thing is the games. And last but absolutely not least is the people. Okay? So to start off with the public area thing, the first and most important aspect for this particular one is the location. Where are you going to meet? Okay, this can be very difficult for some locations or for some cities because you might not have a friendly local game store. More often than not, board game meetups are going to be at a local game store because it's easy, right? It's simple to go there and meet up because they'll already have tables, they'll have a staff that's probably knowledgeable about the types of games you want to play. They're used to having people come in and using their facilities in the same sort of way, all that kind of stuff. Now you might have to make reservations for the tables and things of that nature, but it's not a big deal. Just make sure that you stay on top of it, okay? But that aside, you can go to any number of different places, right? You can go to parks, you can go to churches or other places of worship, you can go to cafes and restaurants, you can go to, like bars and breweries and things of that nature, all sorts of different places. A lot of them are very welcoming of gamers, right? The only thing is that you need to go and you need to talk to these people at these locations and just be like, is it okay if we do this, right? Can we have like a corner to ourselves or whatever? There's actually a surprising number of gaming cafes and things like that that are actually designed for doing this as well, right? Along with the location, one thing you really need to think about is the time aspect, okay? Timing is very, very important when it comes to a public location because places close. Okay, they have set hours. So if you're talking about a board game night, which, as its name implies, will take place after people are out of work in general, that means that you really need to think, how long are we going to be able to stay? Okay, how long of a board game night can we have? Are we going to be doing mostly like smaller games, like hour and a half tops, or can we do a larger, 2 or 3 hour game without a whole lot of difficulty? So those are the types of things that you need to take into account when you're trying to get something going, or if you're trying to go to one as well, right? Second thing is food. Why do I want to talk about food? Because food, all right? It's an important thing, and gaming is one of these activities where you can eat and play at the same time. And on top of that, when it comes to either the public area or a private home for a board game night, I find that doing food in very different ways works well. Okay? With regard to a public place, now this depends on sort of a subset of the public gaming aspect, where you're either going to be having an open game night where anybody is allowed to come, and if they get like whether it's a Facebook invitation or a meetup.com group, whatever it happens to be, if it's something like that where it's very public, then you're probably going to want to not have any food available whatsoever. All right, just leave it alone. But if you're going to just have your regular gaming group meet at a local game store to play a game, that's a different story. Maybe you bring a few snacks or whatever it happens to be. That said, I'm going to say this for both categories, for both gaming at a public locale and also gaming in a private home or whatever it happens to be. The food, right? The actual food itself. I mentioned this in several of my videos. I cannot stand people who are gaming while they are eating things that are like really greasy and, you know, whether it's like fatty, greasy, whatever it is, have a lot of like the dust on it, so like the certain kinds of chips and things like that, stuff that drips all over the place, so a lot of times like sandwiches with a lot of dressing and things of that nature, just things like that, because all the gunk gets all over the cards and the boards and all that kind of stuff. It's just nasty, right? Just keep it away. One of the advantages of doing these sort of public gaming nights is that you can generally have people eat before or after. You have a revolving door of people constantly, typically, right? People might come a half hour before the thing officially starts. They might come 2 hours after it starts. Doesn't really matter, okay? So if somebody shows up and they've got, you know, their chicken wings or whatever, they'll just go, you know, eat the stuff in the corner, be happy, well and good. You might also have like your little subset groups who really don't care and let them do their own thing. That said, this goes back to considering the actual location. Do they allow people to eat at friendly local game stores? Most game stores allow people to eat while they game. Some of them don't. Some of them have restrictions on the type of food that you can eat. Excuse me. For example, several places where I've gamed at would not let you have Parmesan garlic wings because very specifically they are sticky and greasy. Okay? Some wings are sticky, some wings are greasy. These are both. And it was just horrible on all of the games and all the comics and all this kind of stuff, so the store didn't allow it. You know, stuff of that nature. That's the kind of thing that you need to think about if you're the host. If you're not hosting, then it doesn't matter as much, obviously. Okay? So that's just, again, something to think about, and it's different from the more private games as well. Okay, now the third thing on my list as far as things to think about are the games themselves. What kinds of games do you want to bring? This, again, think about the time aspect. You know, are you going to have time to play Twilight Imperium? Probably not. Maybe you will. I don't know. If you're going to have time for it, then have at it. You know, this goes to show there are some board game nights that are actually board game days, and you know, you're literally, this place is hosting for like 12 hours straight. You know, and you can come and go as you please, whatever it happens to be, all this kind of stuff. Okay? There's a lot of options with the games. For me personally, I always like to bring a random grab bag. All the game nights that I go to are mostly public affairs. So anybody who is familiar with the meetup groups and the Facebook page and all that kind of stuff is welcome to join. So I will always endeavor to bring a really good mix of filler, strategic, thematic, all of these kinds of games so that people have a good choice of what they want to play, right? If you bring, you know, 1 or 2 games, however many games you bring, that's fine, that's great, right? And on top of that, you can plan out any specific game that you want to play, and that's awesome. But for me personally, I tend to, you know, I'll just be like, I'll join any group, doesn't really matter, I really don't care, and, you know, here are all the games that I brought. If you guys are interested in any of them, let's play. You know, that kind of thing. I just try to be as flexible as possible when it comes to the games. Because, again, with these public ones, you have no idea who's going to show up, what they're going to enjoy, what they're going to be in the mood for. You don't know when they're going to show up, how much time they're going to have, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of unknowns with it, which brings us right to the people themselves. Okay? So the people are the most difficult thing to control when it comes to a public board game night. And the reason being is if you're going to do a public invite, then you're going to get anybody who is even curious about it. Okay, so there's a lot of aspects to this. I'm not going to go into all of them because I did touch on them a couple of times when I talked about stigma in gaming and things of that nature, where you want to make sure people feel comfortable. You don't want them to feel like outcasts, because we're all gamers. We all have something in common. We're all there for the same reason. So make everybody feel welcome. Like, really make an effort. It does make a difference, and it really helps new people, especially whether they're new to gaming, new to the area, whatever it happens to be. It is tremendously helpful, and you want to do your best with that aspect. Okay, so again, with the public gaming, you really can't control it, but if you have a public game night that is or a private game night with just a select group that happens in a public location, then obviously it doesn't matter as much. Okay, so it doesn't really make a difference. And again, going back to the game selection itself, one thing I really like to have is a good selection of different numbers of players as well. Depending on how many groups we want to split up into, I'll have, games that range from 2 all the way up to 10 players, just depending on what people are feeling at any given time, right? And also different amounts of time, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So the key to any public game night that is open to anybody is that you want to have variety. You want to have variety in every single aspect. Okay, the only thing that needs to remain stable is where it is and how long it is. That's essentially what it boils down to. But with that, I'm going to go now into discussing the privately hosted game nights, like at a home or whatever it happens to be. And again, I'm going to go over those 4 same aspects, but just discuss how it differs from doing the same thing in a public setting. When it comes to a private game night that somebody is hosting themselves in their home, you've got the same or at least similar dynamics as in a public location, but the 4 aspects that I wanted to talk about are drastically different, or by and large they are very different. But again, I'll go over all 4 of them, and again just sort of do pros and cons a little bit of each one. So first is the location. Now, the ideal location would be a place like mine. Right? I already have a whole bunch of crazy games, right? I've got a huge variety, all sorts of different ones, and that means that nobody's going to have to worry about bringing their own games unless there is a very specific one that they really want to play. Then I would be like, I either have it or I don't have it. If I don't have it, go ahead and bring it, we'll play it. Something along those lines. So that is one of the biggest things when it comes to picking the location. Who is going to host, okay? And you also want somebody who has a decent amount of space. You want somebody who has a nice big table, reasonably comfy chairs. Maybe you want to have like some music, all that kind of stuff. Those are all the things that you want to think about. You don't have to worry about the hours that they open and close. You might have to worry about, like if there are kids in the house, if there's a significant other who doesn't want to play, all that kind of stuff. Those are all things to consider as well. But those kind of pale in comparison with regard to, really the space is what it boils down to, and that's what I have always had the most trouble with, is making certain that whoever is hosting has enough room, physical room, to fit everybody, and like enough table space so that everybody is comfortable and able to sit and play. Next up is food. Again, we always have to have food, right? So again, at a private home, you've got a couple of major options with it. The one that I like personally is to do a sit-down dinner before the game night actually starts. Okay, I like to, I'll make a lasagna or beef stroganoff, or like something in a crock pot, something along those lines. That's like nice and hearty that people can just sort of munch on, and we'll have some adult beverages of some sort, just sort of hang out for, half hour, 45 minutes or so. This serves a couple of different purposes. First off, it's going to mean that people really won't want to eat while they're playing a game. Now, you can still have adult beverages, which is always nice, and let's face it, makes board game night tremendously more fun. So you've got those aspects, and on top of that, you also have the advantage of, while you're eating and all this kind of stuff, other people might be coming in that you had invited. So it serves a lot of different purposes. The other major option for the food aspect is, well, if you're going to have food. The third option is you don't have food at all. But the other major one is that you can have people just sort of nosh and eat while they're gaming, whether it's a full-fledged dinner or just appetizers. Doesn't really matter. But again, I would stress, if you're going to have people eat while they're playing games, make sure that you have reasonably clean food. All right, don't do spaghetti and meatballs. Right, do, you know, like cheese and crackers, something like that, something that is an actual snack. Okay, you can have like meals, but it's difficult to have an actual meal that's not messy at the same time. So again, that's my recommendation. Obviously, you can do whatever it is that you want, but I highly recommend having food regardless, because it gives people a chance to relax, unwind, just, you know, shoot the crap a little bit before starting up the board games. It just makes the whole night a lot more fun, in my personal opinion. But again, you always have the option of not serving food at all, and really what this plays into is the time aspect. Okay, do you want to have a board game night that goes a little bit longer? Do you want to focus more on the board games? Because, you know, if you have like a 6-hour board game night and you're going to be eating for like an hour and a half of that, you know, you're cutting your time pretty significantly. But if you've only got, you know, 4 or 5 hours, then maybe you only just go in and you start gaming. You know, whatever it happens to be, right? So that's what I think for food, at least in that sense. Next up is the games. The games and the people for this really go hand in hand, because when you are hosting a game night at your home, more often than not, it's going to be a private affair, so to speak, and you're going to be inviting very specific people, and more than likely for a specific reason, whether it's you're just blanket inviting all your coworkers, or, you know, blanket inviting all your friends, or a combination of both, whatever it happens to be. You know, there's a reason you are inviting all of these people, and with that you can sort of cater the game selection. You also have the option, again, of just hosting it at somebody like me, you know, where I've got a bunch of games for pretty much any interest. But I have found that it's much easier to have game nights where you sort of, like, you'll have people who are more about strategic games and you have a game night for that, and then you have people who are more about like the lighter, filler-ish games, or, you know, you can do like Ticket to Ride and things of that nature, just easier games but not blatantly simple and honestly boring. Okay, so you can do it where you separate them out, or you can try to combine everybody and try to give everybody a taste of everything. The potential issue with this is that you might have people who aren't having a lot of fun, but again, adult beverages always helps with that. And beyond that, you can say, you know, we'll play this game and we'll do this, and then we'll play another game that you want to play, you know, whatever it happens to be, right? You've got very distinct advantages with this, where you've got a set start time, but you can sort of leave the end time open-ended a little bit, so you can know a little bit better when the actual gaming is going to start, whether or not you're serving food, all this kind of stuff. So I personally prefer the privately hosted board game nights, simply because it's more comfortable for me, just in terms of I know that I'm going to be at least familiar with some of the people, and it's just a much better atmosphere for me personally, as opposed to the somewhat chaoticness of going out into a public space and trying to do the board gaming there. But yeah, so those are really the major pros and cons for both of them. And as always, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you are hosting a board game night, if you've ever hosted one, if you ever go, obviously just let me know what you guys think. What do you think of my suggestions? What are your personal tips for a good host or being a good gamer when it comes to doing this kind of stuff? Please let me know anything and everything in the comments below. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so very much for watching it, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much again, everybody, for watching my video on Game Night 101. I hope that you enjoyed it, and again, please put any and all thoughts into the comments below on this subject. It's a really interesting thing, and I'm curious what you guys have to say. Do you enjoy going out on the town to do your gaming? Do you prefer to stay in? Do you prefer the more public atmosphere, more private? Do you like being able to meet new people, or are you more comfortable with the same ones? I would love to hear anything and everything that you guys have to think about, especially all of your stories about this. We always love stories. But with that, thank you so much again. As always, I've got several of my playlists linked up at the top of the page so that you can see some more of my work. And if you want to see more of me in the future, click on that big giant subscribe button. With that, thank you very much again, and I will see you next time.